Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode number 1 of The Shadows of Silver. This was recorded on January 9th, 2022, and it is episode number 1 of a brand new campaign that is a homebrew campaign of mine that is being put together and tracked and edited for your enjoyment. So to begin with tonight, we actually began play by going around the table because we had repurposed some characters from a different campaign, in most cases, plus one new player at the table, Mike. So we went around the room and everyone introduced what had changed basically from the character iterations that we had known before, because we had been playing in the Dungeon of the Mad Mage for a while. From first level up, people were attached to the characters, but not to the campaign. So the campaign came to an end, but we found a way to move things over to the homebrew. So Shadows of Silver takes place in the homebrew world of Fryth Anvor, which is a world of my own creation as part of One for Fun Gaming, LLC, and it is offered to you here for your enjoyment. So please listen in. We start up with everyone introducing themselves, and I hope that you enjoy. Thanks. A few words about what you look like now, where you came from, and some notes about your character, and a little bit about your character's past. For several of you, this is not going to be a revelation at all, but Mike is new to everybody, so welcome, Mike, to the gaming group, and let's just kick it off with that.
My name is Adam. You can call me Moth for simplicity. I am playing Peter Reborn, who is a male tabaxi paladin, standing at 6'2" and just under 200 pounds. A stranger in a strange land, having found himself in an out-of-body experience from what his former life was. He was, at one point, a tiefling in Waterdeep, delving the dungeons of the Mad Mage. Woke himself up one day to find himself on a beach in this tabaxi form, with several of his other dungeon mates nearby. Subscribes to the Oath of the Crown, has a strong sense of the responsibility that those in power have to those without. That, of course, comes with it a strong sense of right and wrong. Urge to do right often overwhelms any outside influence. That's pretty much Peter.
I'm Mike. I'm playing Vedimus, who is a Wood Elf Ranger. The name with his accent sort of sounds like venomous to the listener. It's one of those things where they're not quite sure which they heard, but his name is Vedimus with a D. He's from Lurkwood, which is in Faerun, and he's polytheistic, follows Solinor and Mieliki and the other one I can't quite pronounce, Elistray. He travels to kind of different forests of Faerun as a part of his ancestors' origins, keeps track on kind of the forests, sort of the Lorax where they tend to the trees and everything. Ends up coming in contact with Veyraun, which is the masked lord, and gets into shadow magic a little bit, and ends up accidentally crossing a shadow gate into the Shadowfell, where he's sort of stuck in the Oblivion Bog and has to survive in the wilds and the swamps and all of that of the Shadowfell. Is kind of a rough time of his life, relying on his shadow magic quite heavily, and his deity specifically requires magic items as a gift to sort of meet with him, and so he ends up wanting to search for magic items to trade for additional powers and things. Ends up studying at the Tenebrous Cabal in the Shadowfell, and that's where he becomes a Gloomstalker. Then ends up running into somebody from his past who kind of promises of riches and treasure and things like that, so it's very enticing to him to find these magic items for trade. And that's how he ends up in first initially going through another shadow crossing into the Hagland Woe of Fryth Anvor. And that's where he kind of meets everybody. He's chaotic good. He's Wood Elves are fairly large in terms of elves, so he's about 6 foot, 200-ish pounds. His dark vision was enhanced, so kind of like he had like a procedure done on his eyes to increase his dark vision. And so kind of in the very, very bright daylight, his eyes will kind of glow a little bit yellow. That's Vedimus.
Oh, that would make me next, huh? I'm Doug as the player, Umlilo Amniyama as the character. Umlilo grew up in the great city of Tolvahara, where those with fire in their blood, such as himself, being a fire genocide, are considered semi-divine and well-treated. And so he grew up as the object of a lot of affection with an over-controlling and manipulative mother that he finally escaped from by traveling to another continent and going out into the boondocks. Did some adventuring there. We were going up against Yanti, and they had some plan for destroying the world. And he eventually got tired of that, and he had his own mage tower. But down in the basement was another place of power with a Loxodon who was what's the ranger class?
Horizon Walker.
Horizon Walker, who had access to a gate. So he asked to be taken somewhere else. And I believe the plan was to send him to Sigil or somewhere, but he didn't quite make it and woke up here. In terms of things like look, I have that all written down. 5 foot 10.5 inches, tall but not skinny, healthy but not super buff or muscle bound. Platinum blonde hair, ash white skin, bright green eyes, smooth, deep voice. He's constantly casting prestidigitation on himself because anytime he gets irritated, and that seems to happen a lot talking to Espy, I'm guessing, sparks and embers, off of a burning log, pop off of him. Never seemed to catch anything else on fire much, but his clothes take the brunt of it, so he's always kind of repairing them.
Dean, are you back with us?
Think so. Can you hear me?
We can. Hi, Dean.
Awesome.
How you doing?
Okay. Looking for a better portrait. My name is Dean, and I will be playing Riss Silvertongue. Silver Eyes. He is another traveler, along with Peter and Espy, from a previous campaign. Place where we all got shook up a little bit and ended up being pulled here after various assorted adventures. Riss is a bard, College of Eloquence, and for those of you who knew him before, one of the weird things now, maybe not as shocking as Peter's transformation, but his eyes now tend to be pure silver all the way across. Something happened along the way as we came through, and it's not quite sure exactly. It's everything that happened with him. He's been a little closed-mouthed about that, and he does tend to use disguise self on him so that his eyes do not become apparent most of the time. So most of the time he just looks like he has very, very light blue eyes as he goes, and he is a half-elf, even somewhat effeminate, but for those who did know him before, he's a little less party-oriented than he was before, as in not partying as much, not anti-party as in the group of us. So hopefully we'll all get along and have some fun.
All right, and that brings us to Espy Sylvanesti.
Hey, my player name is Greg, and my character is Espy Sylvanesti. She is a half-elf who started her career as a wizard's apprentice and sage background. She really thought she was a wizard. She just never got the knack of casting spells. She but was very good at weeding out illusions and things like that from her mentor. She therefore started out as a rogue and did eventually learn minor magic as an arcane trickster. At the point that we're starting this campaign, she has finally unlocked the mental withitness to relearn spells daily and has just taken her first level of wizard. She is relatively small. She's only 5'6", about 130 pounds. She's slender, still of a young age, shoulder-length black hair, green eyes. She's very graceful of movement and sure-footed. She's here for the long ride. Again, with the other characters, she came over from Adventures Dungeon of the Mad Mage and is reborn into the tapestry of this new world. And she's looking forward to continuing the fun.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody. I am Adam. I am the Dungeon Master, and I welcome everybody in, and thank you so much for jumping on this, and welcome. The name of this campaign is The Shadows of Silver. Okay. This is Adam from the future again. We're going to speed this up a little bit to make this easy enough to digest and focus in on some of the more fun parts of the normal downtime that happens in a gaming session in Virtual Tabletop. So, the characters and players had all wanted to continue in with a tier 3 level play in Dungeons & Dragons and to finish out eventually, hopefully, at 20th level with tier 4. That is not an area that is normally played a lot of. There's a lot of videos out there that go on about why it kind of breaks down in the upper levels. So this is an experiment for me as a dungeon master and for the players as a party. And you'll see as we go forward that we do try different things out in order to change the pacing up a little bit to start getting the investment in the story. Now, unfortunately, in the first session, right now everyone is playing the role of the stranger in a strange land. So there's a lot of world dump and exposition that has to happen in order to kind of get things going. And that is what session episode 1 is all about. So let's speed up a little bit. The party had come across in the plains. They had been moving from one to another when, unfortunately, some mystical forces in the multiverse had reached out to them and altered their course and destination through this plane shift teleport that they found themselves in the middle of. Depending on where they were coming from and how they had gotten there, they each had a different origin story, but the result was the same, that all of them ended up falling literally on top of Vedimus, Mike's character, the ranger on the beaches of the Qidyrian Empire in the world of Fryth Anvor. And because of their magical fall, they all passed out, and while they were passed out, they were preyed upon by a roving band of slavers who were on their way to the port city of Hesheba, which is where our activity begins. And so, yes, in a sort of a nod to Skyrim adventures, everyone began as prisoners of the slavers, but very quickly on the auction block, they were auctioned off to a mystical house, House Umo. Now, the predominant races of the Qidyrian Empire come from a different plane of existence than Fryth Anvor entirely. In fact, this is part of a cross-planar invasion force that is led by different races of feline humanoids. So we have the traditional tabaxi, we have the somewhat larger leonin, and then there is a race of halfling-sized felines called the mionnim, which are also part of this empire of Qidyria, the Ffelyani Empire, as it's called. And they have made their home, and they've made their home here through rite of conquest over the past 100 years. So the party is being brought through the city of Hesheba up into the mountains that ring the interior side. It's actually the foothills of a couple of mountains that are immediately off the coast of the map. And that is where Hesheba City is located, in sort of this crossroads of trade area in the southern side of Fryth Anvor. Now, the Qidyrian powers and culture is a little unusual to them, so this is a large bit of learning for them. And the party was surprised when they got out of the view of the courthouse and the slave auctions where they had just been purchased, and the representatives of their new house basically offered them a choice. So let's take a listen and see what the choice was that they were presented. Once the wagon turns the corner and the courthouse with its auction block was no longer visible, the tabaxi ordered the wagon to stop, and clambers nimbly into the back wagon bed with you, as the leonin guard frowned and said, "You're certain?" They would have stopped about there, climbing up the hill. The tabaxi nods and smiles and looks directly at Peter, then at Riss, and finally back to Peter again, and says, "Certainly. Never fear, Liesh. I will assume full responsibility if I am wrong. But I'm not wrong, and you know it." Liesh shakes his head, and his golden mane shakes out, and then shrugs and motions for the guards to be vigilant. They make no move, nor seem any more interested in what's going on than they already were, as the tabaxi pulls out a small key carved out of a blue-tinged clear crystal. "Greetings and welcome to the household of Umomexu, the noble Pertan who has just bought your services. Or your freedom." The tabaxi speaks a command word, and the crystal key glows, and at once all of the manacles and bonds restraining you open, and they fall to the floor of the wagon, inert. You can once more access your professional skills, and you have access to cantrips, any innate spellcasting abilities that you would have. The tabaxi grins and nods to Liesh, who hands him 3 wineskins. The leonin drinks a swig from each before handing them to the tabaxi, who also drinks a swig before handing them to the party. He says, "Wine from the mioli fruit. It is our Ffelyani equivalent of your bread and salt customs. Well, I say your because I assume from your appearance that you are from Qidyria, but it is a gesture of trust extended freely to you. My name is Joku Niromu. I am the major domo of House Umo here in Hesheba. I am second only to the word of the master of the house in terms of disposition of the household staff and servants." He touches the sash with one hand and points to the belt that Liesh is wearing. "These color sashes and belts are a mark that we are bonded to the house, sold into slavery as you have just been, yet bondsmen are loyal and trusted advisors and given the right to wear weapons in the presence of the blood of the empire. We were no more than slaves, and now are more than free vassals could hope to become. In this, the Ffelyani society is different from your own, yes? I say this so you take no offense to your humble beginnings, and because I'm afraid that before I explain much more to you, I must offer you a choice. You see, the Pertan's family is bound by more than just his position as the leader of one of the great houses of Qidyria, though members of his tiered court dance a delicate step for the good of the realms. House Umo has achieved greatness due in part to a compact sworn with an ancient power, a patron we are beholden to, blooded, bonded, and beholden alike. This patron insists that none enter service, even as a beholden, without it being of their own free will and accord. Those coerced cannot be trusted, and just as every great house has great secrets, House Umo cannot and will not expose its underbelly to betrayal by accepting service from those compelled. And so I offer you the choice. We will bring you back to the villa today and give you clothing, what remains of your equipment that we were able to secure, food, shelter, safety, and space to deliberate as you continue to adjust to your strange circumstances. Tomorrow at noon, you will be asked to make the choice, to come willingly into House Umo as one of the beholden at first, and then to prove your worth to the Pertan, serving him as one of his questing bands of henchmen, being directed about his business as he sees fit. If not, you will be given 100 silver each and allowed to keep the clothing you have been given, and given directions to a local inn where accommodations will be paid for you for 1 month, food and lodging, so you might find your way and lead a virtuous life in Hesheba as Kismet wills for you. Now, I shall say no more, even though there is much that I could say. Make no mistake, I have been bondsman to the Pertan for years now, and I enjoy my master's complete faith in the arrangement and disposal of his household staff and servants. It is the Pertan Umomexu's will that you be given the choice. It is my decision that you take a leap of faith when you make it, for such is the leap of faith we will be making in such as you, who come to us with great accomplishments already. While you are technically free, the city of Hesheba can be dangerous for those who have no knowledge of our ways. At this, Liesh gives a snort of agreement and rolls his eyes, looking pointedly at Espy. But, Joku continues, if you will please continue if you will please consider yourselves prisoners of custom and not imprisoned by restraint, we would have you enjoy the hospitality of House Umo while you recover your presence of mind, your spells, and you rest fully. Privacy will be given to you, and tomorrow you may make the choice. Without waiting for assent, Joku clambers back over the wagon's front to sit next to the tabaxi drover, and the wagon begins its ascent to the heights where the rich and ornate domiciles are located. 3 wineskins of mealy fruit wine are left in your hands, and aside from making certain that you don't jump down or run off, none of the felinoids around you pay you any further heed. Assuming that you don't try to make a break for it, so let me know if you want to. Going once. Going twice. All right, you're going to continue with your ride. The wagon will enter under an archway into a cobblestone courtyard ringed on 3 sides with residential buildings, with balconies and open-air hallways where servants and other blue-sashed or belted felines move about, laughing and chatting. Formal gardens with a lovely tiered fountain form the south side of the courtyard, and behind that rise 5 stories of formal villa, complete with stained glass windows showing scenes from battles with human knights in full plate armor, most unsuitable for the weather and humidity in the tropics, who apparently are vanquishing an ancient black worm. And I will share the new location.
The bad guys in those stained glass and what have you don't look like snakes, do they?
No.
Good.
Nope. Images. This is a map. Okay, let's pull you onto the combat tracker.
The difference between the sash and belt, is that a status thing?
When you ask that, Liesh will actually shake his head and just say it's more convenient for warriors to wear a belt than a sash. Future Adam here, one more time. I'm breaking in to kind of speed things up and move along. It was a nice little session of roleplay between the characters and players as they went over their own individual back history and reminded everyone in the group as to where they had come from and what it was that they did. The roleplay continued to such a point that Peter decided that they needed more information about what the choice was, and so they went down to retrieve Joku from where he had been staying to see if he could answer any further questions. Let's take a listen to how that conversation went.
Peter goes down and knocks on the door at the end.
He is there. When you go in, you see that Joku is sitting at his desk and has a lot of paperwork, basically, and he'll look up and say, yes, can I help you?
We were wondering if we might be able to borrow you for a few moments. We have questions about our host and would like to be more aware of what choice we are actually making.
I will answer what I can, but as I said, I am the one who imposes the fact that the choice be made pretty much blindly. We have taken a great leap of faith in purchasing you and giving you your freedom, not to mention the expense, and he'll come out to see you guys, but he'll be talking as he goes, not to mention the expense that will incur if you choose not to join the household. But I will answer some things, but I cannot give you the assurances that will put your minds completely at ease any more than what we have already done for you.
Assuming we decide to take the offer and work with you, is that in perpetuity, or is there a chance to gain our freedom afterwards?
Yes, you do not understand the role of the bondsman. There are 3 levels of, there's more. There's free folk within Ffelyani society, which is the vast majority. But when we're talking about a major house, There are the free vassals. There are the bondsmen that are indentured servants would perhaps be too much. It's hard to translate. Our role doesn't have an exact reproduction in Qidyrian society. However, we are not beholden, so we are not servants that have been purchased with our contracts. We have basically been given our liberty and agency, but we choose to remain in service to the house. If for whatever reason you decided that you no longer wish to be a bondsman of this house, there are ways that we could give you your separation, but it would be expected if you chose to remain that even as beholden, you would stay to serve out some measure of, it wouldn't just be a one shot.
Thank you.
But I assure you, bondsman has no need for any personal wealth, although I am quite comfortably well off and given handsome stipends and rewards for my service. But honestly, it is a reward simply to serve. This is one of the great houses of the Empire, and such status is not found easily elsewhere.
You say that it's a great house. How many houses are there in the Empire?
Dozens. The Empress, may she live forever, created 15 houses within the course that I've been serving, and I've only been here for about 8 years. But houses rise and fall all the time. Lesser nobility, greater nobility, but we all serve the blood.
The blood?
The members of the actual house itself. The nobility.
I'm not sure how to say this in terms of role play, but Amulo's just going to ask a few questions more about like goals. He's just trying to determine the alignment of the house kind of thing. You know, is it more drow or is it more honorable?
Joku will kind of get the sense that you're driving in and will kind of laugh at you and say, like, you're not asking the right questions because there's a cultural divide. Qidyrian politics tends to be quite simplistic as far as the Ffelyani are concerned. They call us barbarians because we don't align in simple, neat boxes. The house does what the house must in order to succeed, thrive, and survive. And if some of those actions are harmful to others, please note that the others deserved it because they got in our way. But that doesn't mean that we seek domination, dominion, or, the spread of any kind of evil or maliciousness. It's just simple acts of self-preservation.
Understood. Thank you.
Self-preservation is...
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say self-preservation is something that I align with pretty heavily, so I think I can respect that.
I mean, just in talking with him, what he's describing is cutthroat political maneuvering internal to society. So it's not even like, you're basically coming into the Game of Thrones, right? Like which house is good, So they each do what they have to do to survive.
Does the House Umo have any sort of like a list of values or creeds or anything that they follow, ideals, anything to that effect?
Joku says that we do have a powerful patron, and the powerful patron is one who insists that only those who make the choice enter the household. We are aligned in this. There are many houses that have powerful patrons of one kind or another.
How
May
common
we know the name of the patron?
I will not reveal that. That is part of the information, and I use this as a security measure.
No, that's understood and appreciated.
If you prove yourselves worthy, then all should be revealed in time. But if you show to be faithless servants, then you will be dealt with accordingly.
What sort of action? Oh, go ahead.
do many other houses present the choice such as we have been presented with?
That's a good question.
I have not heard of it in any other house. In fact, there are some that look down on us because we offer the choice.
What sort
But
of...
those are usually the houses that have the hardest time getting agents into our household because of it.
That's fair. That's fair.
Even if they send agents, the fact that we offer a choice and we treat people fairly here generally tends to turn the agents to our sympathy.
What sort of requests might we find ourselves?
Thing and magic.
I'm sorry, what?
Was that... Go ahead, Doug.
Oh, that's just something Omlila was volunteering as like knowledge and magic and spellcasting choice. A spell that's freely chosen cannot easily be ended.
That's a very good point. I wanted to know more about, like, is there what sort of requests might we find ourselves undertaking or being asked of us if we decide to join?
You would serve at the pleasure of the Pertan.
No, so anything.
Yes, technically, but generally speaking, the Pertan is someone who needs others to be mobile and run errands or missions or quests that the Pertan, due to his duties at court, is not free to pursue.
Gotcha. Okay.
We know of your accomplishments within your careers because the divination magic that the slavers used in order to determine your value was quite thorough. But that is why it is unusual that, you were purchased so quickly, because other houses would normally have to consider carefully whether or not they needed any of your services in order to put forth the expense. In this case, it worked to our advantage because we were able to get you all at pretty much bargain rates because they didn't expect anyone to, well, there was nobody else to bid against us. So I will say that the Pertan is quite shrewd when it comes to matters of the coin of his household.
I'll take that as a compliment.
That you were bought on sale at a discount. Okay. At this point in time, the party decided to deliberate a little bit amongst themselves, and the ultimate response that they decided to give was one leaning towards taking and accepting the choice that was offered to them. At this point in time, we're going to wrap up part 1 of the session. It went for over 4 hours, so we're definitely editing things down here to give you the best parts of. Please continue on into part 2, where we will go on with the adventures of the party as they begin to ingratiate themselves within the ranks of House Umo, as well as take their first assignment for the Pertan. Thank you. See you in the next one.